Welcome to Fireside Chat, a devotional that takes place in the Fireside Room at Falls City First United Methodist Church in Falls City, Nebraska. This devotional follows the Revised Common Lectionary, a 3-year devotional tool which gives 4 scriptures each week. If you read all 4 scriptures each week, over the course of the 3 years, you will have read a vast majority of the Bible. Each week we will read the scriptures, and Pastor will give his first thoughts upon reading the scriptures, as well as any other interesting information there is for the week. We thank you for joining us, and we hope you find something meaningful and powerful in today's devotion. Each week I read from the Common English Bible, a recent translation by multiple Protestant denominations, including the United Methodist Church. Welcome in for the 7th Sunday after Epiphany. This is for February 20th. The color is once again green, and this is actually the last week that the color will be green for the lectionary, and it's 2 Sundays before Ash Wednesday. Our scripture readings for today are Genesis chapter 45, verses 3 through 11 and 15. Psalm 37, verses 1 through 11 and 39 through 40. That's in the United Methodist Hymnal as number 772. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 35 through 38 and 42 through 50. And then Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 38. Our Old Testament reading today is Genesis 45, verses 3 through 11 and 15. This is labeled as Joseph revealing his identity to his brothers in Egypt. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father really still alive?" His brothers couldn't respond because they were terrified before him. Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me," and they moved closer. He said, "I'm your brother Joseph, the one you sold to Egypt. Now don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves that you sold me here. Actually, God sent me before you to save lives. We've already had 2 years of famine in the land, and there will be 5 years left without planting or harvesting. God sent me before you to make sure you'd survive and to rescue your lives in this amazing way. You didn't send me here. It was God who made me a father to Pharaoh, master of his entire household, ruler of the whole land of Egypt. Hurry, go back to your father. Tell him this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me master of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You may live in the land of Goshen, so you will be near me, your children and your grandchildren, your flocks and your herds and everyone with you. I will support you there, so you, your household, and everyone with you won't starve, since the famine will still last 5 years." In verse 15, he kissed all his brothers and wept, embracing them. After that, his brothers were finally able to talk to him. There's multiple ways to look at this, multiple things to go to on this, but I'm going to focus in on that last verse. Joseph, if you remember the story, that the brothers, they're jealous of their brother Joseph. They think he's kind of the favorite of dad, and so they get angry at him, and eventually they toss him in a pit, and they take his coat back to Jacob, and say that he'd been killed. And when they tossed him in a pit, some of them go back and they see some traders some merchants from Egypt, and so they sell Joseph to the merchants as a slave, and Joseph goes off. And I think that they had lied enough to Dad to believe that Joseph was dead. Maybe they just thought, well, we sold him into slavery, so we're never going to see him again. I don't know, but they kind of move on with their lives, and then this famine hits, and they head down to Egypt because they're told that Egypt has seed. Egypt has some food, and when they get there, they're mistreated by this powerful governor, and they wind up bowing and begging the governor for various things, and then all of a sudden the governor reveals himself to be Joseph, and in this story we're told that they're speechless, that they can't talk to him. They're so riled with their guilt. They're so worried about what they've what they've done, and how can Joseph forgive them and things. And I think it's pertinent that all through this chapter, they can't talk to Joseph. They're stunned. They're speechless. They don't know what Joseph's going to do. They don't know what to say to Joseph or how to be until at the end of it, that verse 15, he embraces them. And when he embraces them, then they're able, finally, to to speak to him and to be a brother again. And I think that's pertinent to our lives, that we, when we forgive and we want a relationship to continue, it's important to really show that forgiveness in a way that they can understand, and in a way that puts them at ease. That not only is the action forgiven, but that we can continue. We're not going to forgive every relationship in a way that continues the relationship. But for those that we do, it's important that we make sure that we've embraced them, that we've made known that the relationship can continue, because it's really only then that they can be put at ease and they can let their guard down on the other side. Our song reading is Psalm 37, 1 through 11, and 39 through 40. I want to make mention that in my Bible, at least, Psalm 37 has these little markings. These are Hebrew letters, and they're also used as the numerical system. So essentially, those little things are almost like verse numbers, or kind of like verse numbers of a song, rather than say verse numbers of the Bible. But yeah, that's what they kind of are. Is they're kind of just numbering sections of this psalm. This is listed as a psalm of David. Don't get upset over evildoers. Don't be jealous of those who do wrong, because they will fade fast like grass. They will wither like green vegetables. Trust the Lord and do good. Live in the land and farm faithfulness. Enjoy the Lord, and he will give what your heart asks. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust him. He will act and will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, your justice like high noon. Be still before the Lord and wait for him. Don't get upset when someone gets ahead, someone who invents evil schemes. Let go of anger and leave rage behind. Don't get upset, it will only lead to evil. Because evildoers will be eliminated, but those who hope in the Lord, they will possess the land. In just a little while, the wicked won't exist. If you go looking around their place, they won't be there. But the weak will inherit the land. They will enjoy a surplus of peace. The salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord. He is their refuge in times of trouble. The Lord will help them and rescue them from the wicked, and he will save them because they have taken refuge in him. So this is a proverb, really, of mentioning to not worry about that the wicked are getting ahead, that ultimately comeuppance will come in this life or in the next, and it has elements of Jesus' teaching as well. Particularly, what stuck out to me was in verse 10: "The meek will inherit the land; they will enjoy a surplus of peace." Of course, we know the meek will inherit the earth, and the Beatitudes, particularly in Matthew, things like blessed is the poor, and blessed is those who hunger. I think that this psalm harkens to that, and I like finding things like that in the Old Testament, because it reminds us that although culturally we've interpreted God in different experiences over different times, God is in the core message, especially the Word of God has not really changed from the beginning to the end. That God, if you're following God's Word in what they're trying to say, from the prophets to Jesus, it doesn't change. The epistle reading is from 1 Corinthians 15, verses 35 through 38 and 42 through 50. But someone will say, "How are the dead raised? What kind of body will they have when they come back?" Look, fool, when you put a seed into the ground, it doesn't come back to life unless it dies. What you put in the ground doesn't have shape. It doesn't have the shape it will have, but it's a bare grain of wheat or some other seed. God gives it the sort of shape that he chooses, and he gives each of the seeds its own shape. 42. It's the same with the resurrection of the dead. A rotting body is put into the ground, but what is raised won't ever decay. It's degraded when it's put in the ground, but it's raised in glory. It's weak when it's put in the ground, but raised in power. It's a physical body when it's put into the ground, and it's raised as a spiritual body. If there's a physical body, there's also a spiritual body. But it is also written, the first human Adam became a living person, and the last Adam became a spirit that gives life. But the physical body comes first, not the spiritual one. The spiritual body comes afterward. The first human was from the earth, made from dust. The second human is from heaven. The nature of the person made of dust is shared by the people who are made of dust, and the nature of the heavenly person is shared by heavenly people. We will look like the heavenly person in the same way as we have looked like the person made from dust. This is what I'm saying, brothers and sisters. Flesh and blood can't inherit the kingdom of heaven. Something that rots can't inherit something that doesn't decay. And that ends the reading. There's long been question and discussion about what happens when we die, what happens with the resurrection, what happens to their bodies, etc., etc. And I'm not going to pretend to have the answers. I don't think anyone can really have the answers to that question. But I do think that Paul makes a very important distinction here, that there is something that is different about our resurrected body than it is about our current body. And it's important to treat our current body, well, to try and keep it healthy, to try and keep it going and able to be used by God in this world, and you're ready to serve people as long as we possibly can, serve God and serve people, I guess, loving neighbor for as long as we possibly can, but that when we get to heaven, at the resurrection of the body, there will be a spiritual body that is going to be different from what we currently experience, from what we know. Jesus' resurrected body, it looked like Jesus, it sounded like Jesus, it had the scars and it had the hole in his side, just like his physical body did, but also it was different. It could walk through walls. It could appear and not appear. It had stamina and sometimes could be in multiple places at once. And so there's going to be something different about that spiritual body. And I believe that anything that winds up happening to our body, be it accident or done on purpose, is able to be undone in the resurrection of the spiritual body, all the way from amputations and disease to cremation. And then our gospel reading is Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 38. But I say to you who are willing to hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on the cheek, offer the other one as well. If someone takes your coat, don't withhold your shirt either. Give to everyone who asks, and don't demand your things back from those who take them. Treat people in the same way that you want them to treat you. If you love those who love you, why should that be commended? Even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, why should you be commended? Even sinners do that. If you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, why should you be commended? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be paid back in full. Instead, love your enemies. Do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. If you do, you will have great reward. You will be acting the way of the Most High, or the way the children of the Most High act. For he is kind to ungrateful and wicked people. Be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. Don't judge, and you won't be judged. Don't condemn, and you won't be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good portion, packed down, firmly shaken, and overflowing, will fall into your lap. The portion you give will determine the portion you receive in return. So, this was titled The Way the Children of God Act. And there's a lot here that you've heard. and a lot here that's been misused or misunderstood. I think to me, what always stands out in this passage, uh, the lesson I always want to make sure people understand is that we are called as Christians to love those who won't love us back, to lend to those who, to lend to those without expecting payment in return. And sure, if you get payment in return, fantastic, right? But you then have more money to go lend out to more people. But that the call to love, the call to serve, and the call to give, um, it's a call that requires there be no strings attached. So that's a very hard message to receive. It's a very hard message to understand. And by the way, those last verses, they've been misconstrued by something called the prosperity gospel for a long time now. You very well might get more blessings in return for having given. Wesley talked about how oftentimes, in his experience, the Christians who gave, the Christians who didn't build bigger barns, right? They filled their silo with what they needed and they gave away the surplus. They somehow wound up with more surplus the next year, right? Because it was kind of like the parable of the talents, right? They've been shown to be faithful with the one, so then they got more the next time. And I think that's the kind of thing that Jesus is describing here in the last verses, where when you give it, it will be given back to you. That more will fall on your lap, but it's given back to you with the expectation that you're going to give it away again. Um, if you give and you give to the church, or you give to charity, or you give to the person standing on the corner at the stoplight in St. Joseph or whatever, if you give with the expectation that I'm going to give and therefore it will come back to me, and it'll come back even greater, like I'm planting a seed so that it'll come back to me, then you're giving with strings attached. It's the strings aren't attached to the person you're giving it to, the strings are attached to God, which is almost worse. You have to give in order to be a true Christian gift. You have to give expecting that is never going to return. That you're never going to see that again. You don't give to church with expectation that because you gave XYZ to church, you will now have power in the church. No, you give XYZ to church, and perhaps you will wind up with power. Perhaps you'll wind up without a voice or without a position. But you're giving to church because that's what you want to give to God. You're giving to charity, and you don't require there to be a place on the board, right? You don't earmark that money for it to be a true Christian gift. Now, it doesn't mean that all your giving has to be true Christian gifts, right? I've talked about how the Bible talks about, in many places, talks about giving 10%, and I don't think that's a hard, fast number, but it talks about giving 10%. Well, certainly, I think that 10% of your income should be the true Christian gifts, with no strings attached. I'm giving this away, and to whatever you're giving it to, hopefully the church, but charities and stuff count. But I'm giving this away, and then if you want to give another 10% that does have strings attached, I think that's a different story. But I think that there's a calling to give to whoever, to give to your neighbor, without expecting anything in return. And that's a hard thing to accept. It's a hard thing to live, but it's a very Christian calling. Thank you for watching this devotion all the way through to this point. My hope and my prayer is that you have gathered something from this, and that God has spoken to you at some point during this. If God has spoken to you, if you have gotten something from this devotion, please do comment down below. It really does help this devotion be seen by as many people as possible. Please do react on Facebook or YouTube. Comment down below and let me know what spoke to you and what you love about this series. As always, thank you for watching, and may God be with you until we meet again.